Welcome. This is Ken McCarthy, and you're listening to the System Club Masterclass. And this is where we invite interesting people from all walks of life, some of them internet marketers, some people in business, some people doing different things that are interesting and stimulating and will help us all do what we do better. And today, we've got a really special guest. We also have a special format. I'm just going to experiment with something. The first 15 minutes or so of the interview is going to be for the general public. Everybody can tune in. Everybody can participate. And then after about the 15-minute point, then we will go to behind closed doors and talk about the really good stuff. But we're going to talk about good stuff, too, on the first 15 minutes. So we have a guest today. And he's a veteran of the publishing industry, 30 years plus. And I'm sure some people who are going to go, oh, so what? All right, so that's where it begins. 30 years of experience in this industry of publishing books, especially with a lot of expertise on the promotion side. He also happens to be, at one point in history, when the internet was young, there were only 2 people in the whole world who made their living handling internet promotions for other people. There was a time when there were just 2, and our guest was one of those people. He also wrote, for my money, the first there were some good books, but the first really useful, practical, how to use the internet to promote book ever. First one. And things change so much that it had to be updated, and if you did another version, you'd have to update it yet again. But when it came out in its time, it was an amazing playbook for how to promote on the internet. There was nothing else like it, certainly not available in a bookstore. Now, if that hasn't impressed you, I'm going to lay one more thing on you, and then we're going to get to the interview. There was a guy who had an idea for a business, and he had this idea that he wanted to sell everything online. And, of course, you can't sell everything online on the first day. You have to start somewhere. So he decided to start with books, which was a really smart idea on his part. So this guy went to our guest today because our guest was and remains one of the great experts of all time on how to promote a book on the internet to get our guest's advice. Now, the guy that I'm talking about is Jeff Bezos of Amazon. That's who went to our guest for advice on how to sell books online. So, welcome, Steve O'Keefe.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Ken McCarthy, for that lovely introduction.
But it's all true. It's all true.
Yes, there was a day where Jeff Bezos called me and said, would you come in and talk to me about taking the job of marketing director at Amazon? And there were 7 people employed at the company at that time. And yeah.
In fact, you can tell a story that only 7 other people know. What did the original Amazon office look like?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was down, and it was on the 2nd floor of a warehouse building across from the Sears warehouse in South Seattle. So at that time, you had to go up a set of somewhat scary or precarious steps to get to the 2nd floor, where there was a suite of about 3 offices and then a back room for the books. And the offices, all the desks were file cabinets with hollow core doors on top of them. And this was sort of an early tradition at Amazon. They didn't all just have to have door desks, but it became a thing at Amazon that each employee had to build their own desk was their first task as being hired. So when I went in there, Jeff had about 5 white shirts all ironed on the back of his office door, and there was a guy underneath a desk wiring computers together, his IT guy, and then we walked from there down to a restaurant in South Seattle, had lunch, and every year after that, we had lunch together in Seattle, and he just really relished showing me around his empire. And even when it was just that small space, he was really proud of it. And then the next time I saw him, he had moved to a bank building downtown. And then the next time he had a whole floor of that building. And then the next year he had 3 floors of that building. And then the next year they had moved out. They had bought an old hospital. I think it's called Union Hill or something like that. And the whole hospital had been retrofitted into Amazon headquarters. And I was living in New Orleans at the time, but I had come back to try to pitch him to buy this video business, and he didn't buy it. But it was my last time really having an in-depth discussion with him, and since then I've only seen him in passing a couple of times at book events.
Yeah, he's in the stratosphere now, to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such an amazing story. Now, what was South Seattle like in those days? I don't know Seattle at all. I just know the fish market.
They used to call it SoDo, which was south of the Dome, and the Dome was built there. And south of Seattle, south of the Dome was just industrial. It was more or less a place you didn't walk around.
Okay, so it was a low rent district.
Very low rent.
Okay, fascinating. Wow. All right, so what we're here to talk about today, now that everybody has an idea of who Steve is.
But I want to add one interesting
anecdote
for your listeners, because I want to make sure the first 15 minutes is full of value too. But one thing Jeff and I talked about doing at that time was the world's first co-op banner ad, because Amazon was buying banner ads, and I was representing, at that time, publisher Simon & Schuster, and I was trying to buy half of Amazon's banner space so that they would run our book next to in half of their ad. Now, the deal fell through, but it would have been nice. It would have been the first co-op banner ad. And it shows the sort of interesting time that we're in, where something like completely new, like the internet, no one even knew. Banner ads were brand new then.
Right.
Nobody was even sure. And when people saw Amazon buying all those banner ads, they thought they were crazy, because they were losing a lot of money at the time. Mm-hmm. But, the one thing Amazon came out with that was so brilliant was their Amazon Associates program. And that Associates program enabled them to get their name and their logo embedded into thousands, if not millions, of websites. And for a very small cost, because the cost is just a portion of the transaction. So any cost is a benefit, really, to Amazon. And they can adjust the percentage by adjusting their terms of service. So it was just a brilliant maneuver to get all kinds of people to embed bookstores into their site without even thinking of whether that bookstore was going to generate revenue or just advertise for Amazon. Mm-hmm. So a very, very shrewd move that allowed that brand to penetrate much farther than other internet brands.
And we have a colleague, sadly passed away, Corey Rudel, who's actually doing that pre-Amazon, if you can imagine that.
Oh, the social stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he was really out there. Well, great. So we got some history. We know where you're coming from. When I introduced you, I said that you've been involved in the publishing industry for, I have to guess it's at least 30 years.
I started as an editor at Lumpanics Unlimited, who branded themselves as publishers and sellers of the world's most controversial and unusual books. And these were mail order only. They had a big fat catalog with like 500 of the strangest books you'd ever seen in it, and a lot of self-empowerment. They were early to the life extension movement and vitamins, and also space exploration, anarchism,
fake IDs.
Yes.
how to disappear books. They had a lot of those.
That was wonderful. Yeah, I was there. I started there in 1983, and so that's 25 years ago or something. I hope not 35.
I'm afraid it's longer ago than that.
Oh boy. So and edited about 200 books during my 10 years there.
Wow. Wow. And then you were the first guy to really make a splash selling books via the internet, as far as I remember.
Yeah, well, back on the well, when everybody talks about the well, but the early bulletin board systems, even before the well, I was on them looking for, mostly I was a buyer rather than a seller. I was looking for people who could do translations, copy editing, proofreading, illustrations. And I was going out on discussion boards and posting messages that we were looking for illustrators. And we found some people through those boards. I guess that's an early version of Upwork or something. And what happened was in '92, I put a book review. One of our books got favorably reviewed, and I asked permission to reprint the review online. And the publication said yes, because they didn't even know what I was talking about. And so I would go on the well and on Genie and Prodigy. And when America Online came out, I went on there as also. And I would look for, say, if I had a book on success at small business, I would look for small business forums, and I would say, can I post this review of our book from this major magazine? And they'd say, yes, you can, and I'd post it, and then sales started happening, you know. And then all of a sudden people started saying, should you be allowed to post book reviews in these discussion groups? And you know, there was the whole Cantor and Siegel incident at the beginning of the internet, and a lot of people felt like that the first commercial showdown with the commercial internet was over spam, and whether people had a right to send you email even if you didn't ask for it. And I will say to your listeners, there is a righteousness among journalists that says you can't send me email unless I've subscribed. And that is patently not true in the United States of America. There's something called the First Amendment, which guarantees free speech. And that free speech means that if somebody portrays themselves as a journalist, for example, they have a blog, they have a newsletter, they write for a blog, they write for a newspaper, they have a radio show, then they are a journalist. You are entitled to approach them with a story idea. It is not illegal to send a story idea to a journalist. And if any journalist, I've occasionally seen people like Chris Anderson from Wired complaining about being spammed. Well, it's not spam when a journalist, when somebody is asking you to cover a story. That's their right in America. You can't sue them for that. So all of your listeners are entitled to contact people in the media with a request for coverage, and that is not illegal.
Thank you. Chris Anderson, Wired, yeah. I could go on about those guys, but that's another show. The heavily ideological, non-technical technology magazine. That's how I would describe Wired, but don't get me off the track there. But now you had a hit, though. You had an early greatest hit with marketing, I believe. It was a book on hacking, wasn't it?
Yes, and this was what really started me realizing that the internet was going to change the ballgame for publishers. And that was a book called Secrets of a Super Hacker, and it was by an author called The Nightmare. And it was a book about computer hacking, so it's a natural for promotion online. And boy, when I started putting reviews of those up in discussion groups, the fax machine at Loompanix just started humming with orders, including dozens of copies ordered by the U.S. federal government. So hopefully they're not still relying on these manuals for defending our country against cyber attacks. But at the time, it was cutting-edge stuff, included things about how to get a floppy disk out of the trash and open it up and get reclaim data off a damaged floppy drive, things like that. It had a lot of social engineering ruses in it to use to get employees to reveal their passwords. So the sorts of things that were maybe even done in person rather than the computer hacking, you might go in and pretend that you're a janitor and then come away with a treasure trove of material, that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily just computer hacking, but the book took off thanks to this online word of mouth about it. And shortly thereafter, I left Loom Panics and started Internet Publicity Services in September of 1994 to promote books on the Internet.
Wow. That was 2 months before I put on the conference on the commercial potential of the World Wide Web. So I was putting on conferences, but you were actually exploiting the potential.
You were one of the colleagues that helped work out these ideas in those forums on the well and other, you were all over the place like me. You didn't restrict yourself to one network. And so, for example, I learned from you how to write effective email. A lot of people still don't get that email has to be short to be effective. I think they understand that more now in the world of text. But like this book that I have out now, Set the Page on Fire, it has a chapter on the 4-part pitch. And I really think that pitch it's really based on millions of impressions through my PR firm over 20 years. And also, based again on my correspondence with Eric Ward, who I'm sorry, we should tip a glass to Eric Ward tonight, the father of the Link Moses was his nickname. He passed away a couple of years ago.
No, really?
Yes, Eric Ward is in more. And he was the father of the link building campaign and how important the linkage was. And then also Paul Crouppen. Paul Crouppen had iMediaFax or Internet MediaFax. Now talk about a pioneer. Croupen's an electronic engineer and a lawyer. And so he was online early and often, and he developed this system where he could take your news release and using fax software, he could fax it to people's email boxes. It was kind of an interesting portal between old technology of fax and new technology of email. He had somehow rigged it so he could fax and email at the same time. And this was very effective. And he also has had millions of impressions on his news releases. And he has a very strict formula. And he and our formulas are not the same, but they and I'll tell you, his is he likes to see stories of overcoming adversity against great odds. So he wants to somehow have that in every email. And mine is that I want to start every email with unabashed flattery for the receiver of the email to get them to read the pitch, which is the second paragraph, then your credentials, which is the third paragraph, and then action alternatives is the fourth paragraph. That's the 4-part pitch that's in this book. And if you keep your email pitches clean and lean like that, it's amazing the response rate on pitches like that.
Okay. Let's get into that in even more detail in the System Club members only part of the call. But everybody heard it. Maybe it went by fast, and maybe it needs a little more elucidation. But we're going to do that in the System Club call, which follows this one immediately. One thing, and Steve, I think you're not even aware of this, but your success with that hacking book was noted by a guy named Gary Halbert. And you may not even be aware of Gary Halbert because you're from a different world. You're from the publishing world. Gary was from the wild west of direct response advertising world. And among other things, he's famous for the Halbert company, which used to sell, Steve, you could get the O'Keefe family crest.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he invented that idea, and it made money then. It's still making money now. But he was also one of the great copywriters of all time, and a phenomenal promoter. In fact, I think he would have given P.T. Barnum a run for his money. He was that good of a promoter. Anyway, he caught wind of your success on that with that book promotion, and he wrote a letter to his subscriber base, which was very large and very hungry, something like, "This is the atom bomb of direct marketing."
Wow.
And it was the first, and it preceded anything I did by about a year or 6 months maybe. It was the first time somebody sort of put a flag in the sand and said, the internet is a direct response medium. And he was inspired by your success marketing that book. And I bet you didn't even know that story.
I did not, and I appreciate hearing it.
Okay, well, we're going to hear a lot of stories from Steve in the System Club members only part of the call. But I do want to tell you that you should get his book. And I'm not just saying that to please Steve or to make him happy. I'm telling all my System Club members this is a must-have book. It's called Set the Page on Fire. A couple of reasons why this is a must-have book. Number one, whatever you're promoting, whatever you're selling, whatever business you're in, you're going to make more money if you've got a book. Why? Well, everybody knows you need a business card. Everybody knows you need a brochure. Everybody knows you need a website. But those are all weak tea compared to the power of handing a prospect or a customer a copy of your book. Gary Halbert called the internet the atom bomb of direct response. I'm going to call the book the atom bomb of personal, the A-bomb of personal marketing. It is so powerful. Dan Kennedy, who knows a little bit about this, to say the least, says the most powerful things you can do in life in terms of getting your name out there and building wealth, standing on a stage and talking to the right people, and having books with your name on it. So now the problem is, how do you get the book with your name on it? And I'm not talking about the mechanics of self-publishing, talking about the A to Z, conceiving the book, getting this thing written without driving yourself crazy, getting someone else to publish it, and there's a lot of virtue to self-publishing, but there's a lot of benefit to getting somebody else to take that investment on. These are all mysteries to most people, and I've read a lot of books on these subjects. Like, I have a whole bookshelf, at least, probably more. I'm looking over there. It's a bookshelf and a half of how to write your book, how to publish your book, how to promote your book, how to this your book, how to that your book. These pages, which are, it's a nice short book too. It's 153 pages. And Steve, I'm not saying this just to make you feel good. It's how I feel. This is the best book on the process of going from an idea to a manuscript to a book in your customer's hands that I've ever seen. Nothing comes even close. So it's called Set the Page on Fire, Secrets of Successful Writers. Steve interviewed how many writers to get to this?
Well, over 200 published authors and over 50 publishing professionals, so publishers or editors.
And then add that to his 30-plus years in the publishing business, add that to the 200-plus books he edited, add that to the hundreds and hundreds of books that he promoted and authors that he promoted, and you're not going to find many people with this level of background. And in the System Club Members Only call, we're going to get into how this book was actually created, because that's an amazing story in itself. So if you're not a System Club member, you've probably heard of the System Club. It started out as the graduates of the System Seminar, and as you know, I just don't do it anymore. I don't need to. It was a big production. We did over 52 of them, and enough is enough. And so now I'm doing other things. But the System Club goes on. Largely because my members will not leave. I literally thought when I stopped the System Seminar in 2011 that I had maybe 2 to 3 years left and everybody would just drift away. Here it is 2019, and we're as strong as we've ever been. I don't even promote it hardly. As you know, people listening to this call, you rarely see me talking about the club. But if you have always wanted to join the club, if you know that being in this with this group of people is something that's going to help your business a great deal. If the idea of having access to my brain and the brain of my friends, people like Steve O'Keefe, for a mere $3 a day, if you realize the wisdom in that, go to thesystemclub.com. Make sure you put the at the beginning, thesystemclub.com, and you can become a member, and a trial member, by the way. And the stuff we give to trial members, it's almost obscene. Every day I think I'm giving away too much. Someday I'm going to have to pull back and not give away so much. But for now, inertia is winning, and you can basically clean me out, as a trial member. So thesystemclub.com, and you get to hear the rest of the interview and all the 100+ interviews I've done with people like Steve. And you didn't know Steve until I introduced you to him. He's not part of the internet marketing traveling circus. He's somebody that actually does stuff and has done amazing stuff, and he's busy doing stuff. He's not promoting the idea of doing stuff. He's actually done stuff, and that's the kind of people that we like to interview. Really accomplished, really insightful folks who have done amazing stuff and continue to do amazing stuff. And we're going to be talking about some of the amazing stuff Steve is doing now on the System Club part of the call. So hope you join us. And System Club members, just stay on after the music. We're going to play a little New Orleans music because that's a place close to Steve and I's heart, my heart. And then we'll be right back with the good part of the interview. But meanwhile, guys, seriously, just if you don't do anything else this month, accomplish this. Buy Set the Page on Fire by Steve O'Keefe, and you will not regret it. If you do regret it, send the book to me, and I will buy it. You send it to me in good condition, and I will buy it back from you. Just send me your receipt, whatever you paid for it, and I will buy it back because I already have a list of about 20 friends that I want to make sure have this book. So if I'm lying, make me pay. But you're not going to want to give up this book, for any amount of money. But if for some reason you think it's a bomb, which I can't even imagine how that would be, I'm serious about the offer. Send it back to me with your receipt, and I will buy the book from you. Okay, so see you guys. See the club members on the other side of this music, and hopefully see a lot of you who are not club members yet on the other side of the music.